Welcome to the Healing Grove podcast. I'm Dr. Kristin, an integrative holistic family physician, author of Life After Lyme, and host in this virtual space of learning, healing, and growing. I believe humans are like trees, and our physical limb is only one of many. Health on all limbs of the tree, emotional, conceptual, social, spiritual, is absolutely required for the whole tree that is you to be vibrantly well. I created the Healing Grove podcast as a place to showcase some of the world's best integrative and holistic medicine, to expose you to transformative tools and mindset shifts for all limbs of your tree. I hope you enjoy our conversation in the Healing Grove today as much as I enjoyed having it. Welcome, Thom.
Hey, Kristin. Great to be here.
So nice to have you. Everyone, this is my friend Thom Harrison. You are going to love what he has to share because many of us simply need a guide to help us know, love, and trust our own inner mentor. And Thom Harrison is an inspiring source for connecting with and living from that source within ourselves. As a life purpose guide, he works with earth-loving professionals and entrepreneurs who are hindered by fear or distraction. And he guides them out of their own way and into the fulfilling, purposeful lives that call him. Reminded by COVID-19 of his own mysterious, compromising condition called sarcoidosis, Thom has never been more dedicated to leading people out of the harmful stress of fear and into the nurturing peace of a why-guided life. I think we're all going to learn so much from him today, and just want to say thank you again, Thom, for being willing to be with us here.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for the invitation. Really appreciate it. Love what you're doing. I love the Healing Grove.
Right. What we're doing it together.
Oh, yeah.
So you have some really great tools to share to help people ooch their way towards peace and clarity and non-fear, and we're going to get there. But before we get there, I would love it if you would share a little bit about your journey and what brought you to this place you're in, especially as it relates to your own mystery illness. Would you mind talking to us about that?
Not at all. Yeah, it's really interesting. So it's something I'd never heard of before. I hadn't heard of sarcoidosis. And I learned about it in a very interesting way. I one day was sitting at my desk and felt this very sharp pain. And, being the kind of person who's like, oh, that's not, it'll be all right. I'll be all right. Everything's good. It's like I'm still breathing. Everything's okay. Probably not the smartest thing, but I let it go. It dissipated. But then the next day, it came back again. And I'm thinking, is this how a heart attack works? I don't know. This is really painful. And it just felt like somebody's stabbing me in the chest. And also probably not smart. I got in my car and drove to the ER. And checked myself in, and I was in really significant pain. And they gave me the whole EKG, everything for a heart, as if I was having a heart attack. And no, I wasn't. But they found in that process, in the X-rays and everything, they found, a mass, something in my chest, and so that led to the discovery of sarcoidosis. Now, it's an interesting thing for me because I never got an answer to what the pain was. And in fact, it was from their perspective, it was, you don't have a heart attack, you seem to be okay. But you have there's just this thing you need to get checked out, but not related to the pain. So part of the journey for me has been like, what happened then? And nobody can tell me. So that remains a mystery. So anyway, so that led to going to the hospital or having a follow-up check and a biopsy. And that's when they discovered the sarcoidosis, which I had no clue, and come to find out that pretty much nobody else has a clue. It really is a mystery. And I ended up in a program that went for years, actually, where thankfully there was a doctor here in San Francisco, UCSD, UCSF, sorry, where they were doing a study of sarcoidosis, and she happened to be a leader in the study of sarcoidosis. And still didn't know much. They're trying to collect data, right? So I went through this process for years And what I was grateful for is I was being tested through this, and it was telling me my health was generally okay. But I'm also getting messaging like, well, we don't know much about it, but what we do know is it can grow anywhere in your body. You know, it's in your lungs. You know, sometimes it just stops on its own and you're fine. You know, sometimes it shows up in other places and you go blind or this, you know, there's just so many things that can happen, right? It can affect your nervous system. It's just endless. And yet, at the same time, there's nothing they can really tell you to prevent it. They have some ideas about what causes it. And the ideas made sense to me because most of what they talked about in terms of what causes sarcoid is, you know, probably like so many other things, environmental conditions, right? So, which can be, you know, it's vast, right? But I grew up in a business where it was a concrete industry and we were working with cement. I mean, we were working with so many things. I mean, the reality is I could have a variety of conditions that could be caused by that. I grew up with asthma. I don't know. Was it related to that, my father's business that I grew up in? I don't know. But we were around cement, we were around chemicals, and at that time, there's almost no protection, right? So I was exposed to a lot, which I've learned now could actually lead to other respiratory conditions. But so I don't know, and a lot of that will probably always remain a mystery. But part of me has kind of, I think the way I've processed it for myself is, oh, okay, it makes sense. Sarcoidosis is this mystery thing that's happened to me that is a culmination, if nothing else, of all the stuff I did that, of course, was going to affect me. Right? So that's kind of the way I've processed it for myself. But it continues, the way it continues to be an issue for me is in that mystery. Is when, like, so if I feel something in my chest, if I'm not feeling well, if something's not right, I can't help it. I seem to automatically kind of think, oh, is that the sarcoidosis? Is something going on? And so sometimes I'll get nervous and feel like I need to get checked out, or, you know, or at least see what my condition is at the moment. So it's really interesting in the sense that for me, it really seems to, I can go for long periods of time and not think about it at all when I'm healthy, when things are going well. But if I'm not feeling well for whatever reason, that seems to come to the surface as to just a big question mark. Is it this? And if so, is there anything I can do about it? Where do I go from here? And actually, in a significant way, the practice that I do helps me through that, helps me get through those moments where I'm just kind of, you know, in angst, wondering what's going on.
Right. And I mean, I'm not surprised to hear that. This is the first time I knew about your sarcoidosis history. And it doesn't surprise me because you're such a powerful and compassionate, heart-centered healer yourself, you know, and that often comes from a place of your own illness journey. In my experience, a lot of people traverse that, and then on the other side, they've got tools. So you're going to share that tool with us, I think. But I have a bunch of questions first. Like, I really want to, so I think a lot of people can really resonate with that mystery illness piece, right? Like, even if it's something as minor as asthma, you know, a lot of people don't recognize that just because you have asthma doesn't mean you have to have asthma, right? Just because you have sarcoidosis, like, you weren't born with it, what happened? And environment has a huge role to play in a lot of these illnesses. And there's no easy way to track that. And there's no, I mean, it's amazing to me that your doctor at the time said it's probably something in your environment. Like, that's a clue that you can at least then think about, right? A lot of times they're like, there's no known cause or probably genetic. And then what do you do about that, you know? So at least you had sort of some trail to follow, some breadcrumbs. But how long did you really live with the mystery of it before you kind of, I mean, I guess my question is, was it easy to embrace the fact that it was a mystery illness, or did it take some struggle and did you have to kind of, you know, chew on that for a while?
That's a good question. I think I'm actually not sure that I really know the answer to that. I think at first it was kind of like, oh yeah, it's another one of those things where you hear about so many things that people, they can't figure out or don't really know what it is. Or even if they seem to know it, or even if the medical profession seems to know what it is, we find out later they didn't really. They knew a little bit about it, or they knew how to treat it. They didn't know how to heal it necessarily, right? Big difference, right? So you were mentioning asthma, for example. You know, it could be minor, but asthma felt like it was going to kill me when I was a kid. I mean, honestly, right? I was someone as a child who I loved to run. You know, I mean, most kids, I was very active, loved to run. I wasn't going to let something like asthma stop me. However, it did oftentimes, right? I would be flying, running, everything's great, and all of a sudden I'd have an asthma attack and truly thought I was going to die. I mean, it's one of the most painful things in my life. And now that I think back to that it's interesting because I'm not sure that I really thought about this before, but that feeling that I remember now as a child, like just being taken out, like in the moment, like the finish line's right there, I'm going to get it. Nope, you're not. You're gonna hit the ground right here, and you're not going to be able to breathe, or it's going to feel like that, you know. I think it's interesting in this moment, I feel like that was the same pain I was feeling when I had that pain in the chest, but without the loss of breath. Mm-hmm. Right? So when I had asthma, it's like you literally, you don't think you can take another breath, right? But there's a pain that goes with that, at least for me. And in this moment, I think that's the pain. That's what I was associating with that pain. And I didn't realize it. So this is just coming up for me right now. So, so thanks for that opportunity. And I'm probably not answering your question.
The questions are really just, you know, they're really just there for thought provocation. You don't really have to answer them.
I intended to.
So do you feel like what you've come up with now, your system, what you teach people and when you guide people to their why, which we're going to get a little sample of in a second, do you feel like that in some way was born from these experiences of sitting with the unknown and the uncertainty and the fear that comes with not really knowing how to prevent this from happening again, or, you know, what caused it and what to do to get out of it?
It certainly relates to that. Yeah, that's definitely a big piece of it. I think for me, I've related it largely also to a loss of dreams, or my perception of a loss of dreams growing up. And so what's been more present for me is that kind of emotional, or that frame I put around early experiences, where it's like, oh, I'm going to lose this, I'm going to lose this, I'm going to lose this. And so I think that's really what's present for me when I think about the work that I do. But all of the other pieces are a part of that, right? So the health conditions, I think largely for me, the mysterious illness of sarcoidosis, the asthma, I have never consciously allowed that to stop me, right? I've just said, I'm just going to keep moving. Like I was saying, like a kid, I'll just keep running. And then if it hits me, it hits me. However, when I'm in those times of stress, when I get into those places of difficulty, all of that comes back and becomes a problem, right? And I start, like I said, thinking about those things. So what, in a way, you were just mentioning that asthma is minor. We don't have to have that. So in a sense, I don't have it. As far as I'm concerned, I don't have it. I don't have sarcoidosis. I don't have any of that until something in my psychology, until something in the moment tells me, uh-oh, do you have this? Is this what's going on? Is this what's happening to you? Right? And that's where the mystery comes in. It can, a mystery can just sit out there and have no impact on our lives until something brings that mystery back into view, right? And brings it back into our consciousness. Then it's a problem. It's a big problem because it's blocking me from moving in the direction I want to go. It can really slow me down. It can be like the asthma. It can just stop me in my tracks.
Right. So what led you to develop this tool? I mean, it sounds like it was years in the making in many ways for you and a natural outcome for what you'd been through. But tell us a little bit about the generation of this practice that you teach.
So it's very simple. I call it slow, by the way. So for a lot of people, they may relate to that just because, if you've been going too fast in your life, if you're just rushing and running a lot. And it comes from, it really is, and it's very simple. And I think people will recognize all the steps. So it's not a mystery practice in that sense. However, it's the power of it for me is it came over a period of time of engaging a lot of different practices, including a lot of different forms of meditation, a lot of different forms of movement work, walking, which is, my work is called Walk Your Why. And it's it's a metaphor for living on purpose, but in a very real way, walking is very important to me, really important to me. And it's not that I'm against running, but walking, many of us just need to walk more, not just for physical fitness, but because we're rushing and running all the time, if only in our minds, right? So it kind of came to me slowly over time, recognizing all these different things I was doing, partly, just to be honest, trying to do too many different things, right? Trying to have too many different solutions, and I couldn't devote the time. And I was finding that I wasn't really sticking with my practices, because I developed these complicated practices that took hours a day. It's like, it's just not happening. It would happen for a while and then not happen, and then how it is, right? So I needed something. It's like, I'm tired of making excuses for not doing my practices. So I slowly put together a practice that I had no excuse not to do, because it's so easy. I can't forget it. It's an acronym that I can't forget. The word itself, slow, tells me what I most need probably at the time, which is to slow down, which sounds ironic, but I need to slow down so I can get the stuff fit into my life, right? A lot of people don't get that. There's an irony there, but it's so powerful. Slow down so I can actually speed up in many ways, speed up my evolution in a sense. So I don't know if that kind of helps give you a frame, but yeah, this was an evolution. The development of the practice is an evolution. And then I kind of said, it's like, wow, it's really simple. Like, what took me so long to come up with this?
Well,
but it goes deep.
Some of the simplest things are the hardest to crystallize, right? And the bit about going slow to be able to fit more in, I think, is really relevant to all of us. My youngest kids go to a Waldorf public charter school, and in Waldorf, their whole mantra is go slow to go fast. Like, you build the slowness in up front so that, when you're really ready to write, you're efficient and you're effective, and you don't have to struggle because you're actually smoother and more practiced. But is there anyone who shouldn't dabble in this? Is it going to be harmful to any of my listeners, Thom?
Well, probably if you're driving at a high rate of speed, don't do it. Probably shouldn't do it if you're driving. You can. No, I don't think I can't imagine it would be harmful to anybody. I mean, you're the doctor, so if something comes up, stop! What are you doing, Thom? No, I can't imagine. I think, let us put it this way: we've all done all these things in one way or another, and you might even think, God, this is so simple, and you might even think, I already do this. However, I would challenge you to ask yourself, do I really do this the way Thom's laying it out? Do I really do all these steps together? Do I really do it? Or am I trying to do 15 different things at the same time, or whatever? So that's the real challenge here. It's very simple, very straightforward. And ask yourself, if it seems oversimplified, oh, that's just too easy for me. I need to do some deep Vipassana, or I need to do some really more complicated practice. I would challenge you to ask yourself if maybe I need to do something simple that I can stick with. And I can still do the complicated stuff too if I want.
So in other words, if we have the little self-talk going like, oh, I learned that already. Oh, I know how to do that. Or, oh, I did that this morning. You're asking us to kind of maybe revisit that a little bit and see if.
Very much a beginner's mind kind of thing. It's the kind of practice that literally every time you need to remind yourself, okay, it's about beginner's mind.
Oh, say more about beginner's mind, because some people haven't heard that expression.
Okay, so it comes from Buddhism. But it's very simple. It's like, okay, even if you feel like you've learned something, it's the recognition that there's always more to be learned. Even in something we feel like we've totally learned. We really haven't, right? There's always something. I'm a firm believer, and again, with Walk Your Why, it's a continuation. It's not what you walked your why, right? It's not like you got to your why. It's movement, it's continuation, it's evolution. So I'm a firm believer that we never really get it, right? We're getting it, we're never really awake. Like woke doesn't, I understand the way it's being used, but it doesn't make sense to me, because I don't think it's true. I think
it's not a definitive endpoint where you're done.
Right.
Yeah.
I think to me, that's death.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing. I didn't want to say it. I'm glad you said.
Yeah, we're going to do it at some point, but no rush.
Right, no rush. Slow, back to slow. So let's do some slow. Can we do some slow?
Sure. Awesome. So first I'll give a quick overview. So the acronym itself, SLOW. I got to say one thing just super quick real first before I go into it. You said Waldorf School. I'm an eco designer as well. That's been part of my history. And one of my favorite things was building a Waldorf School that we did with straw bale and earth clay and all kinds of cool stuff. It was part of a Waldorf School. So that's awesome. So it's awesome to learn what I didn't know that they had this basis on, slow becoming fast. That's really cool. So the SLOW practice, it stands for stop, in a very simple way: stop, look, orient, and walk. So those are the 4 steps, and it's in their simplest form. Take it a level deeper. It's stop, stand still, and simply be. That's the first step. The second step is look and see, be present to where you are. The third step is orient yourself from where you are, point A. Well, I like to say where I am, that's point A, to where you want to be. Point B is BE. So where I am, where I want to be, it's an expansion. The last step is walk, which is to take the steps, right? We can go, we can stop, we can look, we can orient, and some of us get stuck right there. So you might notice we can get stuck in any of these places. We can stop, but then not do the rest. We can get to look, but not actually, we can get present with where we are, but not actually make a choice to move somewhere else, right? That's called being stuck. Even if it feels good, it's called being stuck. We can't stay stuck. So then when we orient ourselves, we're like, okay, we're getting clarity. Okay, I know where I am. I know where I'm going to go. But then we have to walk it. We have to take those steps. So a lot of us get stuck in that place for now. Oh, it feels so good. I know where I am. I know where I want to go. It's this great vision, this great dream. How many of us don't get to the dream? So this goes back to what I was saying earlier, where for me, I had this rule. It was baked in for various reasons when I was a child that I'm going to lose my dream because I kept losing it. That was my perception. And I've realized now, no, I can recapture that. So that's the framework. So want to do it together?
Yeah, I do. I haven't done any of those things today. It's like already almost 2 o'clock in the afternoon and I have not done a single letter. So yes, I'm in. I'm in.
Well, I'll take that as an affirmation. Thank you. That's all. Oh, and I'm going to say one thing. Some of us too will try to jump. We'll try to skip the first one. Be careful about that. Sorry. So here's the thing. Here's a really important thing about this practice. And I said earlier that there's no excuse not to do it. Now, some of you might be thinking, I don't know, that could take a while to do this. Yes, it could. You could go into this, and sometimes we need to. Sometimes when we go into this practice, we need to go deep and give it time, a lot of time. But the reason there's no excuse is because we can also do it very, very quickly. But we always have to start with this first step, the stop step. If we attempt to skip that, we kind of glossed over it. Because it'd be akin to, oh, I need to do the slow practice. Oh, but I got to get somewhere. Let me hop in the car and start taking off where I've got to go. So the way we want to, and of course, when we do that, then we're, our mind's on something else. We're trying to do something else. Now we're in a place where we can't actually be present to the practice. So let's do it together here. So the first thing, it's always a good idea to slow down before we stop, right? A lot of us, if we try to come to a sudden stop, it can be painful, it can hurt us. That's the one thing that could hurt us if we try to stop too fast. So if you're able to, if you're not already standing, if you could stand up with me. You don't have to if you're not able to stand, that's totally okay. You can use the metaphor of standing, stopping, standing still. But if you can get up, let's first just walk a little bit, just kind of move. You can move in place, but if you just walk just a few paces, anything just to kind of get yourself kind of your body slowed down, right? Because even if we've been sitting for a while, sometimes our mind is racing. So let's just move a little bit very slowly. Normally, if I went not on a video, I'll walk and actually have a name for that. I call it my purpose pace, because ultimately that's what I want it to become. And then let's stop. physically stop, stand still, simply be. Now, for some of you, what's running through your mind now is, what does it mean to simply be? How do I do that? We go much deeper in this in the trainings I give and in my coaching. The best thing I can tell you now is allow it to be true. Just stop, stand still, close your eyes if you would. I like to start in kind of a prayer pose. I'll take some deep breaths, just relaxing breaths. I'll put one hand over my heart. I'll put another hand over my belly and feel the circulation. But all these things I'm talking about now, and of course I'm guiding this. When you're doing it on your own, it can be in complete silence. But all these things I'm talking about aren't in the mind. They're sensory. Feeling, and I could go on for a long time, and sometimes we need to. Sometimes this step alone, we need to just give it whatever time it needs. And if that voice in our head is saying, but you don't have time, you got to rush, you got something you got to get to. And if that's true, sometimes it's real. Sometimes we got to get to the next thing. Then do this as long as you can, even if it's a few seconds, right? Kristin just said she hadn't done any of these steps, right? She hadn't stopped, right? So that's the truth. A lot of us, we don't really stop. It might look like we're stopping sometimes to people on the outside, but our mind is running and racing. We're on to the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. Stop. Right? So even if that is only for a few seconds, like you literally just stop, just to make that break in pattern, that momentary break in your pattern, that's like gold for the day, right? So trust that. So that's where you don't have an excuse not to do the practice, because the truth is this first step, the stop step, is the most important part, because it sets us up for the rest of the practice. It sets us up for a great day, even if we don't get to the other steps. So you have my permission when you do this practice. If need be, you do the stop step, and that's it. And as you drop more deeply into the practice and make it more regular in your life, you move on to the other steps because you're going to want to. And let's do that now. So again, normally this would be in silence, right? And so first, let me give you a few moments of silence without my talking and my guidance, so you can just kind of feel into this step. And I'll move on now because I'm not careful. I'll drop in so deep I'll forget I'm on this video. So now the next step, after we stopped, stood still, and allowed ourselves to simply be, whatever that meant for you in the moment. And by the way, this practice is all about the moment. So no matter what's going through our head, what's going through our mind about other moments, the past or the future, you keep coming back to the moment, because it's all about the moment. And in this next place where we look and see, get present to where we are, now that's personal, right? It's where you are. It's not where I am. It's where you are. And as a guide with you right now, let's allow ourselves to let's just tap into our body, into what we're feeling now. And I don't want you to create a condition that doesn't exist right now. So I want you to just feel into wherever you are, right? And this practice is not just for when you're not feeling right, when things are off, when you're really feeling a lot of stress, when you're really feeling kind of fearful, when you're kind of in a lot of distraction. It's great for getting out of that and moving into a place of peace. And if you're feeling awesome, it's also great so that we can leverage that positive energy that we have. And so wherever you are, let that be true for you. And just drop into that place. Where am I? Physically, mentally, emotionally. And it's not like you have to check all those boxes. It's just whatever's true for you right now. So for me, in this moment, and by the way, the word look, right? We think of when we look, we see. When I use that term, I'm really talking about seeing with all of our senses, dropping into all of our senses, whatever works for you, right? So again, no excuses like, oh, I can't see it. I'm not good at visualizing. That's okay. You don't need to visualize. If you are good at it, do it, go for it. Also, what do you hear? Do you hear anything? Do you taste anything? Do you smell anything related to where you are? This, again, it can be physical, mental, emotional, whatever drops in for you, spiritual. So let that feeling be present and connect to that feeling. Try not to judge it or question it. Try not to reach for another feeling that you want to have but you're not having. Just let it be. Just really let it be. Drop in, be present to where you are. Now again, we could go deep with that. We could go really deep. And in coaching sessions, I mean, and I've mentioned this, but the slow practice is the core of all of my guidance, right? It kind of anchors all of the work. It's the foundation, it's the rootedness. So you could go deep with this. And you can just really quick get present to where you are, whatever feels true for you in the moment. And the more you do this, the better you'll get at it. Okay? So I'm going to assume we all are present in one way or another in this moment. Okay? Just being here is part of being present, right? Just showing up, just being mindful, just being attentive. You're present. And now, this next step is to orient ourselves, right? Which is to find a direction for ourselves. Now, for those of us feeling really good in the moment, you might be thinking, you know what? It's okay. I want to stay here. I want to just stay right here. I get it. I totally get that. But here's the thing, a moment ago I said that the stop step, we can stay with that as long as we want. And if we're feeling like that's what we really needed, and we don't need the other steps in that moment, you have permission to only do the stop step. But if you once you start the look step, I need you to go all the way through. I want you to go from look to orient to welcome. So now we're in the orient step, and we're going from where we are to where we want to be. I want to be. And it's an expansion of I am. I am is not a static quality. It's just an evolution, right? But I am is definitely not about being stuck, even if it's in a good place, right? Because if you're feeling right now is, oh my God, I feel so good, I just want to stay here. I like you to think of it just a slightly different way. Oh my gosh, I feel so good. Oh, my body feels so warm and inviting. I feel happy and joyful in this moment. Awesome. And so I'm definitely not asking you to not be joyful or not feel those great feelings. What I'm asking is for you, perhaps your point B could be, oh, I want to deepen these feelings. I want to feel more of this. I want to feel even more warm in my body. I want to feel even more rich in my experience. I want to feel even more joyful. And if that feels selfish, that's okay. This is self-care, right? So just allow that. If that's you, it's your version. What is your version of movement? Whether you're in a great place and you want to expand that, so imagine expanding that. Or if you're in a place of stress, or if you're in a place of fear, if you're a place where you've been really distracted in your life, and even now all these thoughts keep coming in and getting in the way, but you're still here, then one idea for point B might be to get more clarity, might be to even stay in the practice longer. It might be, you know what? Wow, that stop step really helped me. I think I'm going to orient myself to making that a bigger part of my life. And I'll do that really regularly. And then I'll do the whole practice regularly too, but maybe not as much. Maybe it's that stop step where, gosh, that felt so good, just allowing myself, just stopping. I just don't do that, right? So again, it can be many different things, but feel into what feels good for you now. Where do I want to go from here? Now, as you can imagine, this can also, again, get really complex. We can get into lifetime goals in this practice. And then we bring it back. Because here's the thing about the Orient that's so important. Because we're in the moment. What's really super important is that next step where we're orienting ourselves, where we're directing ourselves. It needs to be a step we can get to. And we need to believe in the moment we can get to it. If it's our whole dream we're thinking of for step B, I don't know, you check it for yourself, but has it worked to take one step and get your dream? You have to determine that, but the whole concept here is this is a step on the path of my dream, absolutely, but this point B is where I can get to now, and I know I can get there, or at least part of me knows I can get there, and I'm gonna go for it, right? Because this is not about adding stress. It's about realizing we can reduce our stress by stepping into what we love. But we're doing it one step at a time. We're walking, we're not running. And that brings me to the last step, which is walk, which is all about taking that purposeful action that for some of us is leading us out of the harmful stress of fear. It's leading us out of the diversion of distraction. And for most of us, the biggest distraction in our life is some form of fear, maybe various fears that distract us or lead us to doing something else that distracts us. So we need to take the steps, right? It's not enough to orient ourselves, as I was speaking about earlier, not enough just to direct ourselves, not enough just to see the point ahead and be like, yeah, I'm gonna get there. We gotta take the steps. And that's why if in this moment of walking, you're like, oh, wait a minute, ooh, I bit off more than I could chew. That's too far away. Not a problem. Step back into the Orient step and get more clarity on a place you can go. And for some of us, we need to bounce back and forth a little bit, but let it be fun, let it be enjoyable. Oh, okay. Wow. I want a new house, but ooh, I don't know how to do that. So maybe you step back and say, oh, what's the first step I can do? Maybe I contact a realtor. Now, that's a very real world thing, right? But that might be what came up for you. So whatever it is, allow yourself, be gentle with yourself, and allow yourself to come back and say, okay, I'm going to orient myself to something that's easier for me to access, but still leads me in the right direction. Beautiful. And then take those steps. Take that walk. Engage that purposeful action that leads you from the point A, I am, to the point B, where I want to be, where I want to go. So that's a version of the practice. It took longer than I expected, so I hope it's okay. But I hope you can imagine that you could do that very, very quickly. You could go through all of those steps very quickly if you needed to. So I don't know where we are time-wise, and I tend to get lost in that, but I hope that was helpful. I hope that was instructive. I hope that's meaningful too.
All of those things, Tom, all of those things. I did it while you were guiding us through it, and I was very surprised at just how far I was at the beginning from calm and relaxed and mindful. I feel totally different now. So thank you.
You're welcome. And you can imagine, oftentimes I was kind of questioning myself as I was going through it. I want to go slow through the practice, right? Because I don't want anybody to be stressed by the guidance, right? So something for any of you who might feel like, oh gosh, you're kind of going quickly through that, recognize that if you engage the practice that I'm offering to you, the course that I'm offering, it's going to go through the paces much more slowly over a period of time. There's a number of modules. We go through each step in depth. So I think it's really important. I really want everybody to realize that just take your time, let it drop in. And that's what I was saying, if need be, just stay with the stop step for a while, and you can play with the others to appreciate them. But really, it comes down to any other practice. If we want to make it something real and effective in our life, it's that regular, consistent, frequent practice. Right? And that's why, even if it's 10 seconds, like, oh my gosh, I've been in a rush all day. Okay, wait a minute. Stop. Stand still and simply be. Okay, thank you. Even that is something far too many of us don't ever do.
Right. Right. So I challenge all of us, including myself, to be more intentional about taking time every day to stop, even if it's just the stop, right? Even if it's just stop, stand still and be. I think it could be huge. One of the things I often tell patients to do is set a timer. Set your phone to ring chimes every hour and commit to 30 seconds of just stopping and breathing and doing nothing. Mm-hmm. It's like, we have all these other practices that are non-negotiable, like, toothbrushing. Like, I'm not against toothbrushing, but, is it transforming your life in a positive way? It's probably avoiding harm, which could be very positive. It's avoiding a bad transformation if you don't. But like, what about something as simple as this that could create huge shifts for people? I've seen these sorts of things create huge shifts when people commit to them. So thank you for that reminder, and thank you for the beautiful guidance. Will you be able to provide us with kind of a written instruction set of that we can just quickly look at to remind ourselves, maybe stick on the fridge?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I have a PDF that kind of boils it down and gives enough detail for each step to be able to do it from that.
Awesome. Thank you so much. That was beautiful. So we're sort of near the end of our time, but I wanted to ask you, is there anything else that we haven't touched on that you really feel compelled to share from your heart with this audience of people who might be struggling with mystery illnesses of their own, or symptoms that don't make sense, or the fear of some terrible badness coming their way? In 2020, a lot of us are in the same boat with that same fear. So I wonder what you would say to us that you haven't already said.
And I may have said this in one form or another, but I'm not sure that I use the word hope. And that's one of these words that, hope, seems so weak. I'm a real believer in hope, because the way I look at the idea of hope is, to me, being hopeful is active. So if hope is passive, like we were talking about getting stuck, if we see hope as being a place where we're just waiting, that's not what I'm talking about. Hope for me is inspired action. It's when we believe something is going to change because we want it to change. We don't want to be stuck. We're willing to take the action. So again, coming back to the slow practice, it's really going through the steps and moving in that direction. So I believe that, one of the things that's powerful for me about the practice, again, you can see how even if you didn't do the practice the way I did, even these kind of intentions, right, of really moving in this direction can be so powerful. Because even if you're stressed about a condition you have, of any fears you have about that condition, we all know, right? This is one of these things where we know it, right? We don't have to be a doctor. We all know that that kind of stress that comes in from that kind of fear, stress can be really good for us, but that kind of stress that comes from the fear of the unknown, the fear of a mystery, the fear, of, am I going to have this pain again, or when's it going to come? All these things, right? That kind of stress is not helpful for us, right? And particularly if we don't act on it. It might be helpful for a moment to say, hey, maybe something, we need to do something, but oftentimes when we don't know what that thing to do is, and we've been going to the doctor and the doctor doesn't know, for example, it can be so powerful to trust in yourself and to allow yourself to move from a place of fear into a place of empowerment, into a place of hope. Now, there's a lot more that can be said about how to do that, but that practice, hope you can see, that's one powerful way to use the practice, where even if you're locked in this fear, you're locked in this stress, allow yourself to see a vision of a healthy you, or the feeling you want to feel, right? Instead of maybe the pain you're feeling now. It's so incredibly powerful and important. And I know you're aware of this as a doctor, right? We all know even the placebo effect. Even the placebo effect, knowing it doesn't make it not work, right? Some of us think, oh, well, I don't know, now it's not gonna work anymore. No, we can leverage the placebo effect, right? So it's super powerful. I would just say, and I know it's harder, it's easier said than done. I get it. But this is where, especially if you go deep into this practice, I go into these things in more depth, where we talk about ways you can really start shifting your mindsets, because that's so much of it, right? Because especially when we're in the mystery, because if we're in the mystery, guess what? One of the beauties of mystery is the mystery might actually have this beautiful, it might be this rainbow with this pot of gold at the end. It might be incredibly wonderful, right? That's part of the mystery. Part of the mystery is we don't know. So we can decide that mystery is going to be something amazing for me, or we can decide that mystery is going to harm me. That's a choice. So I'll just leave it with that.
I love that you're leaving it as a choice. And thank you again so much. This has been really beautiful, Thom. Thank you.
Thank you, Kristin. So appreciate it.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Healing Grove podcast. If you liked it, please be sure to like and subscribe. And if you want to deepen your experience further, consider grabbing a copy of the Healing Grove Playbook. With journal prompts for this podcast and 41 others, it's the perfect place to record your learnings, keep track of the tools you explore, and reflect on your own experience. Finally, it's important to mention that even though I am a doctor, nothing you hear on this podcast, whether from myself or my guests, constitutes medical advice. Any intervention you try should always be discussed with and supervised by a trusted member of your own healing team. Thanks for listening, and see you next time in the Healing Grove.